All right. This is the November 2nd, 2020 Board of Education regular meeting. It is now 6:16 p.m. Heather, please conduct our board roll call.
Mr. Adams, Mrs. Capo, Case,
Here.
Mr. Kushner,
Here.
Mrs. Wolf.
Here. All right, I'd like to move on to the approval of the agenda. You all have an agenda before you. At this time, I'll take any comments or changes or amendments to the current agenda. All right, seeing none, we'll move forward with any public comment. Doesn't look like we have any public comment. Moving on to our first order of business, agenda item 2, discussion items. 2.1, our superintendent's report. Sheldon.
All right. Well, I don't know where to start for sure, but a lot of things going on. But I mean, the big thing to report was that there was no loss of life or anything with our evacuation, and as far as I know, minimal damage to homes. I know that we don't know for sure if any of our families are affected in the Storm Mountain and Glen Haven area, but we're pretty fortunate to have everything going, and I appreciate everybody's support and cooperation, and of course, a big thank you to our firefighters and first responders for their amazing job they did, and Dave staying here and helping them work through the issues that we had here as well, and just an amazing job of everybody working together in the community to make things work. So again, amazing job on all sides, and when the big picture of things is that everybody's safe and we can move on. So that's the big win here. But with that, as far as education is concerned, we did miss some more days of disruption. Also had a lot of social emotional pieces along with that as well. Still sort of working through that as we speak, and we'll continue for a while. We have went over our days for missed days of the school year so far. Of course, we could either make those up or we could ask for a waiver. I always got permission to do a waiver, which we'll qualify for. You qualify under COVID or fire, but having both will probably work just fine. That isn't going to be a problem, but more importantly is how do we get back to the lost time of learning and get our kids back where they need to be. So that's our big push right now. We thought that we would be in evacuation this week, and fortunately things went very, very well and better than we expected, and they released all evacuations today. So again, very, very fortunate. So it's possible that we could go back to school, and we're reviewing that right now as an administrative team, and we would like to go back in person Monday, but we'll review with the health department. The fire issue is not totally over, but really the impact is fairly minimal now, and I think that our main concern is how we come back to school and what do we do before Thanksgiving as far as safety for in-person learning for the most part. So
Sheldon, I have a question.
Yeah, sure.
Do we know anything about COVID exposure to our families over the evacuation?
We know there's possibly some. We have some in quarantine. That is possible. There is free testing going on Wednesday. I sent that out. Just got information on that about an hour ago, and we'll check out. I mean, there is that concern that there could be exposure, communal exposure, as people went to motels and to family members in the Front Range and other areas that. With the increase of statewide and COVID cases. But we don't have any specific things on that other than we are monitoring a couple people with that, so yes. That's where we're looking at. I'll let the administrators talk about, we went to cloud school today in the middle and high school. Today was a PD day for the elementary. But they've been connecting last week a lot with their students, and we still have some students that are moving from coming back from out of state. But for the most part, I think most people are getting back into town. So we're trying to facilitate all that at the same time, is find out what some kids may not even be able to come back. They might have different circumstances that they need to stay where they're at. We've had that in a couple places as well. So just really sorting out, find our kids out. And of course, just because the evacuation is lifted doesn't mean that people can get back into their houses right away in those highly impacted areas of Glen Haven and Stone Mountain. They're still cleaning up the house, smoke, damage, whatever other damage that could be happened. So it's going to take a few days to get those families back into their homes and doing what they need to do. So still a few variables out there, but we're headed towards the next stage, I guess, next decision-making stage. Any other questions?
Sheldon, I wanted to say excellent call last Thursday on the air quality day. Little did we know that it was going to be that extreme in a day, but good call about the air quality. It was hard to breathe. And
I can talk a little bit about that. There was, a couple ways you could look at that. I know some schools went with pretty bad air quality, but what was a game changer, that night I planned on staying in school. But during the night, I monitored all night, and I got up at 1 o'clock in the morning, and the parts per million or whatever it is on the index was over 650, where 500 is the top of the chart, and 200 is hazardous. Again, I thought I'd monitor it till morning. At 5 o'clock in the morning, it was down between 200 and 300, but unfortunately, it got in our buildings. So the idea is that, the air quality outside is bad, but your buildings will be okay. But our filters filled up, and we were running a lot of air because you have to run a lot of air with COVID. And so our building air quality was not good inside the buildings. In fact, it was just as bad or worse as outside. And so, and actually the parts per million got up to 875 when we look back at the monitor, which hasn't worked since, so I assume we broke it. But anyway, our building still had smoke in them for several days. And so we waited and changed all the filters. We're going to have the insurance company come in and clean out all the ducts and vacuum them all out to make our air quality better. Right now, our filters are working and we do have good air quality, but we want to make sure that we have really good air quality and then be able to handle if we have some more smoke. So that is in process as well. But we were fortunate that we didn't have 1,000 kids here that were trying to evacuate at the same time and crossing back and forth. We did recognize that as a possible issue, and we have worked with Chief Wolf and Captain Rose on ways that we can work on that in the future. In reality, we probably wouldn't really evacuate. Our plan is that we would stay here and we just have a reunification here at school, because our school is probably the safest place in town. And that was the recommendation at this point, is that we'd keep the kids. We would tell the parents to go and get their stuff and pick up their kid on their way out of town. That may not work, but we would still be safe here, and we could make sure that those kids, it's the best place for them to try to meet and go different places and everything else. We felt very comfortable that we could keep kids here for a long time very safely, and the fire department agreed with that. So that's sort of our plan, and now we're just working on with the police department, what would the traffic look like, how would we try to monitor that, how do we have a reunification, very simple, with multiple families and multiple groups, and how would we do that with COVID. Not a huge concern right now, but we still want to get all that in place for whenever we need it in the future. We could have done it, and we could have evacuated the kids if they were here, but it would have took probably another couple hours in the evacuation process if we had had kids at school, we would imagine. So anyway, it was fortunate for everybody as fast as that changed, but again, I think that we had worked it out. We did have a similar thing when we had the snow in May of 2000. I don't know what year, a few years ago. And we was able to get all the kids home in about 3 hours in snow. Of course, you didn't have the panic at that point, people trying to evacuate at the same time. But parents did come in and get their kids, and we was able to check them out in that manner. So, I mean, we do have a kind of a precedent where we was able to do that very quickly. But it was a different situation. So we'll want to monitor it and rework our plan a little bit. But basically, we had a good plan in place. So, always something.
Yeah, I was incredibly grateful. That was the first mass evacuation of the entire Estes Valley in the history of Estes. And I was so grateful that we didn't have to worry about getting our kids, or worrying about the buses getting the kids home. So really, it worked out very well. And so good call, and thank you for that. That was an incredibly scary day.
Yes, it was an interesting day, and like I say, it worked out very well. So we're happy that it worked out. So in other news, I do have our October count. Oh, yes.
Can I ask a question really quick?
Mhm.
Talked about having the company come in and clean the decks. If we're anticipating returning to in-person on Monday, is that work going to be completed? Are we going to be fully functional on our ventilation system before everybody's back in the buildings?
Our ventilation system's working fine now. When we did the filters, it cleaned it up. So
Okay.
we're trying to get them up as soon as possible, but I'm not sure it'll be done by Monday. But we don't have any smoke in the building right now or residue from it. We cleaned all the filters and got new ones, and we also got some more orders, so we'll change them again quickly. Yeah, that probably wouldn't be done. They're also working in Pooter and Thompson too.
Right.
So we're trying to work with them, all three of them, same time. But yeah,
Okay, but everything's going to be good to go come
Yeah.
Monday.
it would be. Yep.
Sheldon, I also want to say that with all the craziness, and this is a shout out both to you and all the principals, I thought communication was really good. All the emails and newsletters you guys sent out, people appreciated them, and they thought it was really well communicated. So thank you to you and the whole team for doing that well.
Thank you. Yeah, people put in a lot of hours and worked at the last minute, and sometimes we made decisions when we're in the middle of something that it changed that quickly. But the administrative team and Heather and everybody did a really great job of communicating. We appreciate that. So, thank you. Any other questions? Like I say, we do have October count finished. We ended up totally being down about 85 kids. About 67 kids from our buildings. Options is quite a ways down, of course, and then kindergarten is way down. But from kids from last year to this year, if you went grade for grade, it's about 65 kids. Most of those kids are in middle and elementary. Actually, the high school only lost 2 kids. But we have about 65 gone in the middle and elementary. Some went to pure homeschool. Some just went to a different schools. Not very many are in the lost section, as a lot of schools have. There's a couple, not many. And then some chose to do some other schools. So that's where we are right now. It's very accurate, but we are down some kids, like most school districts in the state. And I think that's about it. Unless you guys have more questions.
Yeah. Any more questions or comments from the board to Sheldon?
Just one more question. For the 65 students we're down, how are we going to be with that financially?
That's a good question. As you're aware, there is almost all schools are down pretty significantly. So they're trying to figure out how this October counts will work and where that money will go, because they had that money funded and those kids just aren't there in our public schools. So we'll see how that works out. We're also fortunate, of course, to be in categorical buyout and fully funded, so it doesn't affect us as much. And also we have a 3-year average that won't make it that significant. So for this year's funding, with our COVID funds, it'll probably be okay. But in the future, it could have some pretty significant impact, depending on, new COVID packages or whatever that comes our way. The governor's budget came out today. It was very favorable as far as I'm concerned. He's talking about $900 more per student. and buying down the negative factor. I'm not sure where he's getting the money. I just barely got it like 20 minutes before this meeting. I haven't read it all, but that is the proposal of more dollars for one-time dollars to try to get our schools back to running where they need to run. I did talk to Representative Newgoose last week sometime, and he doesn't really expect another COVID package probably till after the first of the year. They're still in negotiations. No matter who wins the elections, they don't see that they'll probably have a COVID package from the federal government until after the first of the year. But he wouldn't say that for sure, but he doesn't really see that happening. So we'll have to see how that goes. We've been doing fairly well with our money that we have now. We've been trying to be very prudent to save money so we can get through the rest of the year, but we've also had some increased costs in Remote Learning Academy, just with the number of kids and some of our other things to be able to cover some of our programming. So it's going to be tight and it's going to be interesting, but there's so many factors on how they do October count. They haven't even decided how they're going to do that yet. What the state is going to be able to do, new COVID measures, grants that are coming out. There's so many variables. It's really hard to say how it'll affect us, honestly.
Thanks.
All right. Any other comments or questions? Welcome, Eric. Any more questions or comments for Sheldon? Is there anything you'd like to say, Eric? You just joined. No?
Have we started the meeting yet?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So what are you asking me about?
Yeah, Sheldon just gave his update, his superintendent's update. Do you have any questions for him while you're here?
Not necessarily, unless he addressed the how we're doing with testing as far as time it takes. And
Yeah, I haven't addressed that yet, Eric. You asked me
Okay.
about earlier today, and I can address that. As I told you, testing is crucial. There's several things that are crucial to in-person learning as we come back. One of them is how the health department quarantines people and what they look at. When we first had our first quarantines, a big quarantine, basically whole classrooms, no matter if that person was in there at all, they quarantined everybody, which is pretty significant. And that's why we had 6 teachers out at one time and so on. They have changed that. There is some really good news as far as COVID's concerned, and that is that the things that the schools are doing, COVID is not spreading at school. People are not coming to school and giving it to other kids at school. Our masks, our distancing, our protocols are working. And I had a meeting today with several other superintendents, and really there is very little or no spread in schools. But the community spread, of course, has increased rapidly. So that means people are coming in. And when they come in, that means people that have close contact have to be quarantined for 14 days, which can be very disruptive to schools. And there's a lot of schools, as you've noticed, that have been going out just because it's been so disruptive of that. And so that is our biggest concern, is not the safety of kids getting it at school, or staff even getting it at school, but that people will be quarantined and we won't be able to run school, or will be in and out of school. Like I say, they have reduced how they do that. Now you have to be, they come in and you investigate and you find out who are you sitting by, not the whole class. So if you're sitting in the back of the room and the person was sitting in front of the room, they don't take the whole class. They only take the people immediately around you and quarantine you. The teacher, if they stayed 6 feet away, they would not be quarantined. And everybody was wearing masks and doing what they need to do. So that's kind of a game changer of being able to stay in school consistently. The second part of that is what Eric brought up, is the testing. And testing we got it down to 24 to 48 hours with state, but as the increase in testing and the increase in cases have went up, it has slowed up a little bit. It's taken most cases with the state about 3 days And then other organizations like UC Health is taking 3 to 5 days. Salud's taking 3 to 5 days. Hospital, if you get a recommendation and you get there on their time, they can have it in same day or next morning. They can take it in 80 minutes, but it has to be kind of the right timing to be able to do that. And we do it in certain windows. So, but they can have it basically in a day with their programming. So it's kind of mixed. They're not doing as well as they was, but it's not 12 days like it was as well. So probably not as crucial as issue as long as they keep the close contact of people only being in your immediate area, that you're around 15 minutes and closer than 6 feet. So that's sort of the big game changer. But the problem with that is also there's a large increase in community spread. And that's where schools are getting it, is out in the community. The communities aren't doing a great job of stopping the virus, and it's affecting our schools. And so there's a lot of schools that are being shut down by outside spread, by recreation leagues is another big problem that we're having in the state, not in Estes necessarily, but in the Valley and other places as well. It's creating a lot of problems among students. In fact, that's where most of students get the COVID from, is recreational sports. So not school sports, not CHSA sports, but recreational sports. So that's sort of the data right now, and so it's something to monitor. It is concerning how fast the community spread is going on, but I still am very confident about our safety measures that we have at school and the safety that we have here, as long as people continue to be vigilant of watching their symptoms, quarantining, letting us know what's going on, testing, and wearing their masks and distancing at school, as well as keeping our cohorts.
And Sheldon, I saw in your last communication to the entire staff that you recommended that they get the free testing on Wednesday.
Yeah, I've been trying, I brought it up several times that we needed everybody tested up here, and it's been working with the health department and the city, and we finally got it arranged. It took a while to get all the specifics out, but yes, I think from 10 to 2, we will have testing in town. It'll be free. Probably take 3 to 5 days, and that sort of testing is what I was told. But it would be nice if all of our staff either use that facility or one of the other facilities with our insurance would pay for it. But they'd probably have to get a recommendation from a doctor, but probably could under the evacuation system. It would be nice just for that peace of mind that people come back feeling that they didn't pick up the virus. Again, testing is only good as if you have the virus at the time you take the test, but it still would be a great indicator, and probably very important for our community as a whole to take it, since we were all displaced at the same time.
And Sheldon, I wanted to ask too, in one of our previous board meetings, the hospital had said that they might have a testing process that gets the results back in a few hours. Is that not?
Yeah, they do have that. They do have that, and you know, you can get it in a few hours, but you kind of have to be the timing right. They only do it like from 10 to 12. You have to have a doctor's before, so it's really hard to logistically do it. But yes, once you take the test and they run their batch, they can get it in about 80 minutes. But so most of it is the next day. They can do it very quickly. But you do have to go to your doctor first and get a recommendation before you go there. And then it's only open in the mornings from a certain time that you can actually take the test and they run it. So, but yes, it's very quick. And if you can get the test, it only takes about 80 minutes to get the results. So.
And then the testing on Wednesday, that's free. You don't even have to give your insurance information. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it's run by the state. I think a private company paid for by the county and the state. And it's totally free, and I think you just have to show your ID is all you have to do, or I don't even know if you show your ID. It's very open to everybody. So.
Yeah, and our community is an extra high risk because of the evacuation, and I hope that a lot of our staff and a lot of our community members do it.
Right.
Right.
And that'll give it a good indication of of some of the issues that we could be facing.
Yeah. Right. Thank you, Sheldon. Anybody else, any other board member have any questions for Sheldon or comments? No. All right. Thank you, Sheldon. That was a great update. Moving on to 2.2, administrative reports. We'll start with the elementary principals, Principal John Brandt and Principal Aaron Miller. Welcome, you guys.
Hi. All right. I just want to echo what Sheldon started with of just my heart has been with all of our families and our students and our community, and the past few weeks have been unlike any other. And a huge thank you to our first responders and our families of first responders within our school community these past few weeks, and what they've gone through. But I keep on thinking about how our school and our district focus on social emotional learning and global outcomes has really been shining the past month, as our community has just come together and really persevered through this experience. You know, I feel like the first thing like people have said is, oh, connection circles and community meetings. And it's so great that that's just become the backbone of our community and our response to these situations. And I think it really speaks volumes to about the learning and the changes in our community over the past few years and our investment in those pieces. So, you know, last week, as you know, we had our connection meetings. Teachers had connection Zoom meetings with their classes last week, and we had a great success. I think, you know, there were Halloween costumes and virtual parties, so it was great to give something positive and exciting for the kids. And you know, we found out through that about 3/4 of our families were already at that time back in Estes and here. So it's good to have a pulse on where our families are and how they're doing. But I just want to start, and I'm glad that there's so many teachers here today, because my whole board report, I pulled it up and I was like, oh my gosh, I feel like both so much has happened since the last month, and I can't believe it's been a month, and has it been a year? I'm not really sure, but I just want to give a huge shout out to all of our amazing teachers, because since I was thinking about our last meeting and walking into the school, and since then, they have successfully and positively welcomed students to in-person learning and transitioned to in-person learning with new COVID procedures and everything that was so different from our teaching before, and did it successfully and happily, and kids were excited and doing so well. And that was huge. And we had 13 days of kids having great learning in person here that our teachers facilitated. And then they turned around and taught like champs when they were in like with great positive learning environments where there were plumes of smoke outside their windows and you could see flames from their windows, and their kids were just, hey, like listening to the story and ready to learn math. And I just like hats off to our teachers, because they're like pretty heroic in my mind right now from what they've done the past month. And you know, during this time, they also finished up the first quarter with their grades and report cards and parent-teacher conferences, which is always a heavy lift amongst all of this. And then, you know, you might know our measures of student learning aren't a part of our teacher evaluation process this year, but our teachers are all creating goals. And so we've had goal meetings with our teachers, creating excellent goals that are, you know, super dedicated and targeted and committed to, you know, making a 1.5 years growth in reading, and despite all of these disruptions, and just really going for it for our students and aligned with our mission and our school improvement plan. So, you know, it turns out there's not a Hallmark card that says you rock for being a master teacher in a global pandemic surrounded by wildfires, but I'm gonna have to like create that, because I don't know if a card does it justice, but thank you everyone out there. So I think the only other thing, you know, I keep on thinking through, okay, what was I thinking about before we left for the evacuations? And you know, the only other thing, you know, our teachers this fall have been really committed to, with our smaller cohorts, our transition to having, you know, our teachers owning our READ plans and our ELD student plans, and doing such a heavy lift of learning and work and commitment to our students. And so, you know, our October PD Day, which again feels like a million years ago, was targeted around that learning. And our PD Day yesterday was planned to be, and we transitioned it to more, you know, our plan for Cloud School for this week, But in the midst of this, K-3 teachers are still working on their 45 hours for the state on foundational reading. So they've just been really, really committed and working hard amongst all of this. So it's been a big month for the elementary school.
No, it has, and thank you. I love all the shout outs that the principals that you guys give to your staff. Really a weird year to the absolute extreme, and I'm blown away by the response, the nice cool as a cucumber for educators. It's amazing. So thank you, Erin. Anybody have any questions or comments for Principal Miller? No? All right. Thank you, Erin. Principal Bryant, what you got?
Yeah, so I'll just echo some things and then talk about some other things as well. Not to sound like a broken record, but obviously I didn't think wildfires and pandemics would be on the agenda for us as we have meetings over the last few weeks. Pandemics was one thing, and then wildfires, and so yeah, I'm happy. Obviously, we're all just fortunate and just grateful that as far as we know, our staff and our students are safe, and that's been our focus over the last couple of weeks. We've really had to shift again to making sure that we're all taking care of each other and that we're all taking care of our kids and our families, because it's been like nothing I've ever experienced, and hopefully nothing like we'll ever experience again. But our teachers just have done a fantastic job. Last week, was really the first week where we evacuated about a week and a half ago on that Thursday, and we spent the first couple of days trying to get our bearings of where is everyone, and then the next week, last week, connecting with our kids and our families to make sure that we're all staying connected and taking care of each other. And our teachers did a great job of connecting remotely with our kids last week. And while they're trying to manage their own evacuation situation, some of them had been evacuated already for weeks because they were in Glen Haven or Storm Mountain. We have a teacher that multiple staff members that have evacuated 3 or 4 times already this year. So, it's unprecedented, doesn't really do it justice. Our shift right now, we've been talking a lot today about moving to Cloud School this week, and then also what it has in store for us as far as whether we're in Cloud School or in person, how we need to support kids and families, and that social emotional piece is now more important than ever. Our counselor Kelsey and some of our other district-wide counseling staff have been working real hard to connect with teachers on how we can meet the needs of individual kids and families, because it's very individual right now when you're dealing with trauma and you're dealing with circumstances like this, whether you're an adult or whether you're a student. And so we're really leaning on our classroom teachers to help. They know their kids best, and to try to get a read on where we can support those kids over the coming weeks as we hopefully get back to some normalcy. Obviously we had some good news come out today with the evacuations being lifted. Hopefully that's something that we can be cautiously optimistic about over the next few days and into the next few weeks, with weather dependent. So that was good news. At the Cameron Peak fire, we had at the elementary level, we had about 30 students or so displaced with the Glen Haven and Storm Mountain evacuation. And that's been going on for a couple months now, really. Then of course, East Troublesome, that Thompson one that we affected the entire community. So we're just doing our best to make sure that we're taking care of the social emotional needs and the physical needs of our families first, so that we can then get back to some semblance of normalcy. We have Cloud School happening starting tomorrow at the elementary school. One of our things is going to be adjusting for some individual circumstances of families that we know we have. We've had families that have left the state and that have gone to stay with extended family or whatever the case might be, but some that have done that permanently, some that have done that, but they've only done it for short term until things settle down here. So that'll be the next couple of days. I think it will be us getting a read on how we take care of those individual circumstances for families that have kind of spread out across the sometimes across the country, definitely across the state. So we'll just be shifting to cloud school and taking care of our families. You know, it's I just continue to be blown away with what's thrown at us, and the fact that our staff and our teachers and everyone on the staff is taking it in stride, and we continue to hold strong, put up a strong front, even though it's challenging on all of us, and we're continuing to keep our students in mind when we're interacting with them, to make sure we're taking care of them, while deep down inside we're all still as adults dealing with trauma here too. So it's been definitely I think like Aaron said, a heroic effort, and I know we're not done with it. So just proud of our staff, proud of everyone that's come together, and proud of our community. I mean, a week and a half ago, whenever it was really, the fire was picking up, I didn't know whether we'd be rebuilding a community or what, but I'm just proud of everyone involved. And so, yeah, excited to see kids online tomorrow, and then hopefully back in person as quickly as possible. Yeah.
Excellent. And John, I'd like to, Erin Wharton, Mrs. Wharton, sent us a letter before this meeting, and I'd like to read it out loud to the board. And thank you, Erin, for sending us this letter. It says, I would like to express my great happiness with in-person school lately. I think that the admin team did a tremendous job getting all the kinks ironed out, and it was wonderful to have the students in school. As a mother of a first grade student, I also wanted to say that my family was impressed with how in-person learning went. Our child was happier than ever. A huge thank you from our family goes out to the EPSD admin team. We know that you have worked very hard to make in-person happen. I look forward to being in person again as soon as possible. Thanks again to the district for all that they have accomplished during these hard times. Best, Erin Wharton. Thank you, Mrs. Wharton. So I wanted to read that letter. She sent that to us before the meeting.
Thanks.
And thank you, John. Again, it was an incredibly scary week a few weeks ago. We made it to the other side. We have a community and we have homes. So thank you. Anybody else have any questions or comments for John? Principal Bryant? No? All right. Thank you, Erin and John. Moving on to Principal Janet Fanning.
All right. Hi, everybody. A few updates from the middle school. I, again, just echo everything that John and Erin said. I think I've also been really reminded of the flood in the last couple weeks, and people that weren't here for the flood, staff particularly, asking a lot of questions about that. And I think really just defines who we are. Like, of course, that's what we did over the last 2 weeks, because that's what we do in Estes. So it felt good to be a part of the community and everybody coming together. To start with, I really spent my time those first few days just finding all my staff members. I felt like I couldn't find 200 kids, but I could definitely find 31 staff members. So I found 30 by Thursday night, and I found the last one Friday morning. I was just, we're family, and I needed to make sure they were all safe. 2 did end up out of state, and then hotels and friends' houses and families' houses, kind of like everybody. But and then as we got into last week, we knew our next focus needed to be finding all of our kids and checking on them. We did the connection meetings also on Thursday. We did connections on Thursday, and then we did like fun day on Friday. We did Cahoots and just some activities with kids. I want to just give a shout out to my counselor, Sam Becker. She created a Google form tool that we used for a social emotional check-in. It's been super helpful, and the teachers really appreciated it. Instead of just them trying to lead this conversation on their own, it was a really good tool that gave kids a chance to rate their feelings and their stress level, and it gave them a color that they were. They could also on the form mark if they wanted to see the counselor or talk to the counselor. And as of this morning, we've had 66% of our kids have filled out that form. On Friday, 22 were still evacuated of our kids. 9 of them had wanted to see the counselor, and she was making all those sessions today. She was Zooming with the kids that felt so much stress they really wanted a one-on-one with her. So we've only had 1 student withdraw. I was really worried about that with all the movement, but we did have 1 student withdraw, but today we got a new enrollment. So balanced out at the middle school. So quite a time to come join us. global outcome wise, I think it's going to get old, but our word of the year is just perseverance at the middle school. So I think both staff and students have shown that over the last few weeks. I also just wanted to touch on our in-person learning was going so well at the middle school. I think we worry about how kids may react to certain changes. And I got to tell you, we did so many changes. No lockers, no moving in the hallways, no eating in the commons. I think our kids were just all super glad to be back at school and be with their friends. I think we have so many things in place at middle school to keep people safe. I'm excited for us to get back to in person whenever that is going to be, but I think we're all ready for that. We made the switch really well today to Cloud School. I would say smoothly made that switch. I've had a number of teachers, we've done some staff meetings, and I try to get input from them, and a number of mine just say, tell me what you want me to do and where you need me to be to do it. Like, they're ready to go whatever we need them to do. Today we did have, which is high, we had 113 kids out of 184 have one or more absences. Seemed really high, so to make it sound a little bit better, only 39 of our kids had 3 or more absences. So that means a whole lot of them just didn't go to 1 or 2 of their 6 classes. So 6 classes every day. And out of all of our kids, 39 of our kids missed either 3 or more classes. So that sounded a little bit better to me than 113. We do have 2 different schedules. I think that was one thing we spent some time just getting really clear with kids about, that the in-person schedule is definitely different than the Cloud School schedule. And this was the first time to go this way from in-person back to the Cloud School schedule, but today went pretty well. And now I think we've got it figured out. If we're ever in Cloud School, it'll be this schedule, and when we're in person, it will be this schedule. So that worked out really well. We had a couple kids come in and use Wi-Fi in our commons today. They worked on their own, but they just connected to Wi-Fi. Brian Lund and his crew figured out how to get them breakfast and lunch, so that felt really good. I think we'll pick up a couple more tomorrow. We did have a number of kids in the middle of Zoom today from hotel rooms say, I gotta go, we get to go home. So they were actually in Zoom when the evacuation orders lifted today, and they were like, I'm out, we're going home. So that's part of the reason we had some, I know, good news for our kids. So conferences at this point are postponed. We're not going to worry about that this week. We're going to get kids back in the building, and then we'll make a plan. They are student-led conferences, so we really need some time with our kids to get ready for those. The last thing I just want to touch on off of the crisis topic, we are well into our grading for equity, the book study at middle school, but really making changes at the middle school. First quarter grades are in, and I'm just super excited and proud of the changes that some of the staff have made a really big impact. So out of all of our kids, every student has 6 grades. That would be 1,104 grades. 106 of those were D's or F's, and that is dramatically lower than what we were seeing last year. I don't have access to Infinite Campus anymore, but I have lots of paper copies that I printed out last year. But that's a really big change for us. And those 106 D's and F's represent 57 kids. So, you know, most of those kids had 1, some of those kids had 2 of those. Of the D's and F's, 56 of them were D's and 50 were F's. Spread out, interesting, quite a few more in 8th grade, 33 kids in 8th grade, 9 in 7th grade, and 15 in 6th grade. But those numbers directly relate to which PLCs have taken on grading for equity as a goal this year. Directly relates to the numbers in those grade levels. The other really big thing I'm proud of is of the D's and F's, only 25% of them were Hispanic students, and about 40% of our population is Hispanic. So we've really made some changes in our grading policies. I'm just proud of our staff for, in the middle of all this, I think it would be really easy to say, not now, right? We got to figure out COVID, not now. We got to temperature check them, like all these reasons, but my crew has just continued to move forward. Really happy with where we're at with that. So we'll get through the rest of the week in Cloud School. Hopefully we'll be back in person next Monday, and we'll be ready to have kids back in the building. Does anybody have any questions?
Yeah, Janet, you mentioned, I would think I just want to make sure, clarify.
Yep.
You mentioned that equity in grading has had an impact. Are we going to be able to, with everything going on, are you going to be able to narrow it down that that's what's going on? Or is it, there's so many things going on at once and so many
Right.
balls in the air. I don't know if you
Right.
can, how close you can direct that.
That's a really good question. We had a leadership meeting after school today, and two of them on the leadership team said everything else, why not do it this year? Like everything else is up in the air. But tracking it, I think, is going to be difficult for a couple reasons. One, so many things changed. And the other thing, we're out of Infinite Campus. A lot of teachers are still struggling to find some of their data from last year and even the year before. But with their goal setting, Eric, they've got really clear, like one of the teams is doing 3 strategies every quarter. They've agreed as a team, like no zeros, no penalty for late work. Like they have really concrete things that they didn't used to do, like that are brand new to us. But pinpointing that that's exactly what it was versus, oh, it's somehow related to Cloud School or something like that, I think is going to be difficult for us. But for me to say we've made these changes, we hope to end up with a policy in May, a school-wide grading policy that will be clear. But no, I think you make a good point in terms of proving it with data, but we certainly know the practices that we're changing.
Yep, good. Thank you.
Yep, absolutely.
And Janet, I think I said this last time too. I have a very happy middle schooler, and she loves in person.
Good.
She's terrified of not going back in person. The only extrovert in the whole family, but she loves it. And from Glenn too, great feedback from the one middle school teacher that I talk to all the time. So it sounds like you're running a tight ship.
Trying to. Thanks, Laura.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments for Janet? Principal Fanning, I mean.
Great.
Thank you, Janet.
Thank you.
All right, now moving to the high school, we've got Principal Chuck Scott and Principal Bodie.
Good evening, everybody. Chuck and I usually split it where I kind of take on the instruction and then he takes on the activity, CTE, and athletics kind of side of things. So we'll do that. I'll reiterate a lot of what the principal said because it's in alignment. And one of the things you guys should know is we meet regularly as a principal PLC, our own professional learning community. And so we try to really talk through things, help each other, and align what we're doing in all of our schools and what our practices are. So we repeat a lot of what you hear because we're doing a lot of the same things, which is a good thing. And so I just wanted to kind of hit on that. Another group that we didn't really recognize here, when we started getting evacuated for the Cameron Peak fire, many of our families in the Canyon and Glen Haven and Storm Mountain, the retreat, they were being evacuated. And so, I invited our counselors and admin to a Sunday evening meeting, and they almost all came. And we, as a counseling and admin team, started planning right from the get-go. And we kind of split up into 3 tasks. And one group of us took on identifying every single staff member and student that was in evacuation that we needed to contact and respond to. Another group took on communications with families. And then another group took on building a website of resources for our community. And we made some quick work of that. We worked for about 3 hours Sunday afternoon, and then we continued to meet in the last couple weeks just to revise, add resources, and talk about how things are going. So we have some new counselors, and I just want you to recognize that they are doing some tremendous work with our students and our community. And then we also hired a new social worker, Courtney Carroll, as well, and she's been part of that team. So we have a great group for social emotional learning support at our district. We, on Monday of evacuation week is what I guess I'll call it, we first did a connection meeting with our staff that morning, and we just modeled what we wanted them to do with students in connection meetings, tracking them down. How are you doing? Do you need some extra one-on-one support? Should we set up a meeting later? And getting track of all of them. Our connection meetings with students that happened last Thursday at 11 was about a 65% turnout. And since then, our teachers have been working hard last week. They've been making phone calls. They've been using the Talking Points app to contact Spanish-speaking families so they can text back and forth in Spanish and English. And then Jose's been assisting us with calls, so we've been able to contact almost every family now. and know what their situation is and where they're at. Today, we were a little disappointed with our attendance. We went back to cloud school, as you know, and our attendance percentage was 79.5% today. So we didn't have everybody back in the classroom and learning yet today. So we'll hope for better numbers. I know that there were some students moving back into their homes today and some students just making their way back today too. So we'll keep trying to get that percentage to go up as the week progresses. And then, as you know, the high school's been really focusing on our improvement plan this year as far as our own professional learning. And where we want to improve is in 3 major areas with instruction. One is under our teaching part of our vision, which is really trying to personalize learning for students and improve their blended learning instruction. So we've been focusing a lot of our learning on blended learning instruction. Number 2 is under the learning, which is grading for equity. We started that work last year. Still moving forward with that this year. And then the third big one is performance assessments and incorporating GEOs into our semester assessments and looking at performance tasks. So since we met last, we've had 2 staff meetings, and one of them we started talking about strategies for our English language learners and closing that opportunity gap with grading. It's interesting because our staff had a perception that more of our students this year were getting D's and F's in classes because of the struggle with remote learning being harder for them. But actually we dropped that by 5% from last year. We looked at the DNF list at midterm last year and compared it to end of quarter this year. And so that was good news. We're still not finished with our quarter grades yet because the last 2 days of our quarter, when everybody had their performances with their students and all of their final semester exams, we canceled school those last 2 days of the quarter. And so then the next week we are evacuated again and had school canceled. So when we extended the week for grading, canceled again. We've now given teachers and students till November 20th to get those final performance tasks accomplished with their kids from first quarter. So we don't have final grades yet. So we don't know what our final DNF count is, but we know that when we just did a cross section, it was already lower. And then today we had a staff meeting, and John Anderson, our instructional coach, put together an incredible resource for our teachers around performance assessments. He modeled blended learning and put together a choice board playlist for teachers. And they worked through it, and they learned a little, talked a little, learned more, talked more, learned a lot more, talked a lot more. And it was all around performance assessments and global outcomes. And so that was pretty neat that he put that together. There was a lot of learning happening with our staff today. And one of the commitments we've made as a school is that every single staff member will share out their biggest success with performance assessments at the end of the year in May and what they tried, and share some student artifacts from that. So we worked on that today as a staff. And then the other thing that I would share with you, I guess, is we are looking at making a decision now about what our second semester looks like. As you know, we have 4 classes at a time right now, and then the next 4 classes, and that's to limit exposure. We need to start scheduling students at the high school for second semester classes. So we've been trying to make a decision between purple-white schedule or do, again, the 4 classes at a time for the first quarter, 4 classes at a time for the second quarter. In watching the COVID numbers in Larimer County go up, as I know we all are, we're thinking let's stay the course with limited exposure, and we're going to keep the same course with the 4 classes at a time. So we'll be getting that out in our newsletter this week to all of our parents. And so that, I think, is all I have for instruction. I'm going to pass it on to Chuck, and then you guys can answer or ask us some questions.
Thank you, Ruby.
Good evening, everybody. The first thing I want to do is we have 17 firefighters that are staying in our school. They just finished up dinner in the Commons, and then they moved themselves to the gym, and that's where they sleep for the night, and they're using our locker rooms. But 17 firefighters from Puerto Rico, and they are nothing but true professionals. I mean, they just clean everything and just take care of everything, and they're a joy to talk to, and just appreciate that they're here from Puerto Rico to help our community. So that's the first thing I wanted to start with. It's pretty cool. So on that Thursday, as we were evacuating, we had an appointment with the state for our final walkthrough for the CTE building. And being he is employed by the state fire department, he was able to get up here at 1 o'clock, and we did our walkthrough. Took us about an hour and a half, but Mike Todd and myself and Dave Colson was going back and forth between the hospital because they were trying to evacuate them with buses and stuff. And we have occupancy in our CTE building. So we still have a couple things that he wanted to fix, and then we still are waiting on our welding hoods to come in and our welding, and then we'll have to get them wired in, and he'll come back and do one more walkthrough. But our kids can be in the building now, and I think our well, I know our construction geometry class is going to begin using some of the tools this Thursday and Friday and in small groups. And Maren Bosley has some lime trees and avocado tree planted and growing, and we have some starter plants already growing. And so the CT building, if you get a chance to stop by, gladly give anybody a tour, because it's going to be a neat facility, and excited to get more and more kids in it now that we can officially open it. So kind of exciting where we're at with that. Athletics, not a lot to report. I do have a Patriot League AD meeting on Wednesday, and then a state AD meeting on Thursday, and they're going to begin to get us directions on what our basketball season will look like starting on January 4th with practice, and wrestling and girls swimming will be those first 2 months. So far, the football season, those teams that did choose to go, it's going well, and with Chassa and those teams that are playing now. So we do have some of our teams that are, our football team was out practicing today, and we'll still, once the gym's open, we'll get our basketball teams going, and the girls swimming is going to start some workouts next week at the rec center. So that's kind of where we're at with sports, and I think that's all I have. Questions for Ruby or I?
Chuck, first of all, huge congratulations on getting the CTE building. You've been working on that a while. It's a huge gift to the district, so thank you very much.
Yeah, well, just huge kudos to Dave Colson, Maren Bosley, Mike Todd. We wouldn't have got it done without him, and then Sheldon and Brian for always having the money that we wanted to make it. And it's a pretty neat facility.
Thanks. Ruby, I had a question for you. And I know things have been crazy, but how has it been going doing the block scheduling where kids are doing like a year worth of class in a semester?
Well, it's certainly an adjustment because we're used to the every other day block. The hardest thing for teachers right now is trying to look at what they would cover within a semester and condense it into 4 weeks, just as far as the timeline goes. And so that's been the biggest struggle. It's been hard because of the canceled days for us. And then it's also been hard with balancing the amount of work that we do in synchronous time when we're in synchronous learning and Zoom meetings, and what we assign in asynchronous time to students to do outside of that learning time that they can work on in the 2 to 3:15 time and on their own for homework. And so it's been a complete adjustment for teachers to the way they've been teaching for so long. They're having to completely rethink their lesson planning and design. One of the things that's really helped is that we adopted a blended learning template as a staff that we use to plan that 1 hour Zoom instruction. And so that's been helpful. And it's got formative assessment built in, so we can make sure we have a solid learning target in every lesson, and that we're formatively assessing it before they leave, and then reviewing when they come in with the asynchronous work that we've given them to do at home alone. So not only, I guess what I'd say, Jason, is not only are we dealing with a condensed schedule into 8 weeks and only 4 classes at a time instead of 8, we're also dealing with Zoom meetings for an hour instead of a 90-minute class period every other day. So it's just a structural change completely too. So I think with everything that our teachers are going through, I just can't, I know you've heard it from all the principals, but our teachers are really resilient, and they have been working really hard and putting in so much extra time to reformat their entire lesson planning. So, I mean, they're tired, you guys. They're really tired. They're tired. And so, yeah, we're just so appreciative of them. And they've been delivering some really solid, really great instruction to our kids through the Zoom platform. We're really pleased.
Great, thank you. And thanks for you and all the teachers' hard work.
Yeah, thanks.
Chuck, I have a question for you. My favorite high school sport is probably wrestling. And hopefully I'm being optimistic about, January on, about the pandemic. How on earth can you do wrestling safely in a pandemic? Like, what does CHSAA say about that? I've thought about it. Like, how can it happen?
Right now they're saying we're a go. They today actually they start monitoring the weights of the athletes so they don't cut too much or and stuff. So it's we'll find out more on Thursday, but as of today, it's a go, and they think they can do it in a safe manner and stuff. We both with wrestling and swimming in that first season, we probably aren't going to have a lot of the big tournaments that they usually have on the Saturdays. Swimming, there's going to be quite a bit, or not quite a bit, but some virtual meets where they'll stay at their home pools and just swim and then match times. And with wrestling, I think we'll have a lot more dual meets and smaller tournaments on Saturday. So, but right now they're saying it's a go.
Yeah, I think it's going to be one of those that we have to just watch and wait. I hope that they can have a season. It just did. I had no idea how they would do it safely.
Yeah, exactly.
It actually isn't CHSAA. It's really CHSAA putting in the regulations to the state health department. The health department really saying what those rules are. So, it is. It's not CHSAA making the rules. It's the health department approving the procedures. So they must think it's safe to be able to do it. So.
All right. Any other questions for Ruby or Chuck on the board?
Not necessarily questions, but Chuck, congratulations on occupancy to the CTE building. I know it's been a long time coming and can't wait to see it. I love to see your face light up when you start thinking about kids getting in there and starting to take off. That's fantastic to hear. So congratulations. I know that's been a long haul to get there.
Thank you.
You bet. And Ruby, thank you so much for recognizing the hard work your teachers are doing, as well as their state of exhaustion and where they're at right now. I think we all recognize that, and I'm sure there'll be lots of people that are able to recognize that in other methods here as we go through the rest of the school year and see what kind of develops as we go here. But thank you. I think both of you guys are just doing a fantastic job, and I'm so glad to hear all the good news in the midst of everything that we're having to go through. So thank you.
No, we appreciate that.
Thank you.
And speaking of good news, I don't know, we did have a moment of good news this week. We shout out that news about Mina Honda. Yay, Mina. Is she still in the meeting? Yes, she is. She's a finalist for the Westbridge Scholarship. So we're excited for her.
Mina, you're amazing. I'm so proud of you. All right. Any other questions or comments for our high school principals? No? All right. We're moving on now. Thank you, Ruby and Chuck. Now we're moving on to Director of Special Education, Mr. Laszlo Hunt.
Good evening, everyone. Again, I get the honor of being last to do updates, so I'll try to keep mine brief. Echoing what everyone else said, but I just want to kind of fill everyone in on special ed has been, we were just beginning to take on some new challenges just before the evacuations. And that was looking at integrating some of our highest need students back into the general ed classroom, which Doesn't sound like a lot because it's something that's been a primary role of special education forever, for 30 years or whatever since the laws, well, longer than that, 50 years since the laws have changed and IDEA has been in place. But it was under COVID a new challenge to have students who don't wear masks consistently or are verbal or cannot social distance the way other students can be integrated into the classroom. So we went full range from fear and from students maybe being out of the classroom more to where we were beginning that process. And so we're very excited about being able to look at that again as we make decisions here about going back to in-person. I think we had some really good plans. I want to just honor the special ed folks, all of our providers, having to work through these plans with students. It's been very difficult and very hard for us to have to pull our students and have them be self-contained when we know that's not the best for them. So really helpful and really looking at how that's going to look in our classrooms, and our teachers have been super receptive and working with us on that. So that's where we're heading. Of course, the challenge to that is, and I think Laura, you mentioned it in an earlier meeting, staffing, getting folks to be able to hired and be able to work with our student population. And so that's been a challenge, and that continues to be a challenge for us, but we are getting closer. Had a great candidate today. I'm very excited. So I think we're moving forward on that. I'll kind of update you a little bit on options. Sheldon mentioned our numbers being down. We are down significantly. We typically have 45 to 50 students in our in-person options in the past, mostly elementary age. This year, because of COVID-19, we had a lot of families that just chose not to do that. And we had a lot of new families, and I'm working on tracking that down. I want to kind of present that in a future meeting of how many students we actually had go to homeschool, how many went to, and how many new. We have some new in options and such. So we are at about 25 in our in-person. The YMCA graciously donated space for us to use for options this year, because the church where we typically operate, there was just a lot of struggles with getting with working within the framework of what we need to do with COVID-19 regulations, and the YMCA facilities that were previously being used for Cloud School. We just kind of converted those and plan to put our in-person options there for about 25 students. And our opening day was actually the day that we evacuated town, so we never got to do that, but we're hoping to get that started here in the next couple weeks and get that rolling. We have about 8 or 9, 10 students that regularly attend an online options program, and so we're able to continue to fund options with those numbers, and that's where that's at. And then real quick, an update on our Remote Learning Academy. Like the other schools, a lot of those families obviously were in different various states of being with family or being in hotels or traveling, and as well as the staff that's supporting that program. And so we followed lead with the other schools and really spending time just connecting with families last week. And the families were all over the place. We had kids turning in work, the day after evacuation, all the way to families that took us more than a few days to get in contact with. Most are back in some kind of position to be able to continue doing their work, and they're back at work this week. I think there's a couple that we're still working with that are displaced and not able to do the full program, but are still communicating with us. So and those teachers were great, jumped right on getting that communication out, and just as the schools were reaching out to families. And again, most of them are back to work or back in their program and working as of today, some last week. But we're also looking at, as we approach the end of the semester, meeting with families that are considering going back to in-person. We've also had quite a few, and I didn't get any numbers from Mary before this meeting, but we did have some that decided to go to the remote learning a little bit later. So we've had a little bit of movement in and out, but not a whole lot. And so we're meeting with families and some students right now that are really struggling to make some decisions about, is this the right platform for their learning, and looking at the natural exit time being the semester for some students, if that's going to be the best path for them. So handful of students, I wouldn't say it's right now, it's only, I know of 4 or 5 that we're talking with about that. So that's all I've got right now, unless you have questions.
All right, anybody have any questions for Laszlo? No. I did want to say, for all of our administrators and for Sheldon, I've been on the board now through 2 major natural disasters, and comparing how the fires were handled compared to I really appreciate the support that Sheldon and our administrators, you have all given our staff. I didn't see that so much with the flood, and I really saw that a lot with the fires, and supporting and helping the families and the children. You all have gone way above and beyond, helping our staff and helping our students, and really during a very, very scary time of almost losing our entire community. And you all just, you all worked amazingly well together. The communication was amazing, and I thank you for that. I love to see how we have evolved as a district to deal with natural disasters from just my time on the board. So thank you all very much. I'm so grateful for all of you. Anybody else have any comments or questions for Laszlo or any of our other administrators? No? All right, thank you, Laz. Thank you, everybody. Moving now to 2.3, board reports. Anybody have any board reports?
I actually went to a workman's comp meeting right before this meeting. Nothing huge to report. We increased our deductible, so we're in good shape. And also, I think due to remote schooling, workman's comp claims are way down, both from fourth quarter of last year and first quarter of this year. So our workman's comp fund is in good shape.
Excellent. Thank you, Jason. Anybody else? No. I did the CASB delegate assembly. The results will be coming out through the CASB website. I'll send those out to all of you, everything that we voted on. It actually went extremely well on Zoom. We're used to meeting in person for the delegate assembly, and we actually finished on time, and that never happens in the delegate assembly. So that was the nice part of Zoom. No social aspect of it. That was kind of sad, but we got a lot of work done in a very short amount of time. But when that comes out with the resolutions that they passed, I'll send it out to the board members. All right. Moving on to agenda item 2.4, our quarterly finance report. Mr. Lund.
All right, good evening. So in your board packet, you guys have 2 financial reports, one for 6/30 and also one for 9/30. I'll go through the June 31 first. These numbers are currently being audited. Our audit started the week of the fire and ended abruptly on Thursday of that week, and it's been postponed until November 9th. But we've been going back and forth since last Thursday, getting them, or a week and a half ago, still getting them information, things like that. So in the report, you'll notice that our revenue is at 101%, or 13.4 million. That main driver for that overage is the state para payment on behalf of the school district that's statutorily required. Our share of that was about $200,000 this year. We don't budget for that, so that fluctuates every year, and we don't know what that is. And we don't get the number from para until after June, when they calculate everything based off of contributions that the districts make, or statewide. So that's why our revenue we collected for last year in the general fund is at 101%. You also notice that our expenses are at 97%. That's due to us shutting down in March and not having spring sports and some of that type of stuff going on, transportation being shut down, things like that. The rest of the report that you guys have, I know it's 48 pages, so there's a lot of information in there, but it's the standard deposits, check registers, broken out by building, and then also compared to the prior year. So I guess, do you guys have any questions over that? I know I'm throwing a lot of stuff at you, but.
I know on 6:30, but are you going to go now through 9:30 or the first quarter? Or?
Yep, I'll go through that one now.
All right, go ahead.
So the 931, you'll see we've brought in $1.1 million so far in the general fund, and we've expended $2 million. And that's typical because we get all of our revenue in March when property taxes are collected. But if you were to compare this to the prior year, overall, our expenses are down compared to the prior year. And that's also due to online school, things like that. We're not running buses. So we are down quite a bit year to year if you did a comparative to the prior year, but that's the main driver behind it. We didn't have any fall sports and things like that in the middle and high school. And our spending's down because we're just not buying as much stuff right now because we're not in person, so we don't have as many consumables going out. We also prepaid some of our large expenses with funds that were available last year, you know, like our iPad lease and things like that. So that's another driver on why our expenses are down for the first quarter of this year. We did go through a lot of our subscriptions and things like that for all of our online stuff, and we got a lot of stuff prepaid in June for this year just because we knew budget-wise it's kind of up in the air with how much money the state's going to be bringing in and things like that. So we tried to front load a lot of that stuff in last year just to free up some revenue for this year so we can continue to give raises and things like that. So that's kind of where we are at 9:30. We are kind of lagging behind right now in our SO collection, so our specific ownership. People haven't been buying license plates just because there was the waiver and things like that. So, I mean, we are kind of lagging a little bit on the revenue side of things too, just because of things like that. But overall, this is normally what it looks like after Q1 on a typical basis. But we're just kind of lagging overall if you compare it to a prior year. That's all I got.
Ryan had a couple questions, and just if you could address in some areas of the budget for first quarter, we're over on accounts by a considerable percentage.
On what accounts?
On certain accounts. I can bring them up if we want, but 200% or 600% or.
And that might be just because of where things got budgeted.
I suspected that, but I just thought, just to address that to make sure if that was like a prepayment maybe, or.
If it's an overage, it's just because things might have got changed coding wise because the state changes our chart of accounts on a yearly basis. And we have moved some things around tied to grants, things like that, because grant codes have changed. And then we've also had a few things that we didn't have budget enough for, and those get caught in our mid-year adjustment that we do annually. So that's why there might be some of those overages that you're seeing, is just because of things like that.
Yeah.
So example would be like a lot of the COVID stuff that we bought, all the supplies and everything, that would be over our normal supplies. And so, I mean, we wouldn't usually buy masks and washing stations and all that. Those sort of things could be on there. And also we did increase teachers because we have remote learning. And so we had to replace those teachers there and some other staff to cover some areas. So there could be some things that we need to adjust. There's grants and stuff that are circling around there. So we'll probably be able to do that, cover that. But because as you said, we have also places that we haven't spent money in other areas. So we should be able to go through that. But it's just the change of way we do business and where it came out is probably what you're seeing. Oh, we can check it.
I kind of suspected that, but I just wanted to check in and make sure, because I knew that there would be overages on something like COVID expenses for
Yep.
like washing patients, things like that, as well as I think it was RLA teachers or something that we had to hire in. So I just wanted to clarify that.
Yep. And so if you look at it too, we have a really high budget right now in admin, just because we freed up all of the CRF money, the Corona Relief Fund money, because we were able to move teachers' pay and things like that into 22. And we haven't allocated those excess funds yet to offset those expenses within the building level. I was actually supposed to meet with bookkeepers last week, but we didn't have school and everybody's evacuated. So we do have that out there too. So once I sit down and meet with them and go through all their COVID lists, they've been tracking everything as they buy things. We will move money into those accounts because we wanted to track it at the building level, because at the state we have to report it at the building level. So that's why some of those expenses are over too, just because we haven't backfilled those excess COVID expenses yet with the money that was freed up with the CRF.
Sure. Thank you.
Yep.
All right, any other questions for Brian or comments? Nope.
Okay, thank
All right,
you.
thank you, Brian. Moving on to our student board representative, Ms. Honda. Mina, are you there?
I will start by saying the communication throughout these past 2 weeks was really great. I'm glad we got the problem figured out and the emails are going to all of the right places now, and all the information that got sent out was really helpful. So thank you all for that. I personally did not return to in-person learning while we were doing that. All of my teachers were on quarantine, so I zoomed in from home, but I did get to go in and have some one-on-one meetings with teachers, which was really nice, and it was good to be able to go into the school building and talk to people face-to-face. So I hope we can return safely to that soon.
Mina, I have a question for you. Your peers and your friends, do they feel safe going back to in-person? How do they feel? What kind of feedback are you getting?
Yes, I think all of the procedures that everyone's going through with the hand washing and the seating charts and all of the precautions that the school is taking, students do feel safe returning.
And do you see that a lot of your friends are wearing masks, or?
Yes.
Is everybody pretty good about wearing masks?
Yes, in school, I think students are really good about following all of the procedures that they have to.
Excellent. Thank you, Mina. Any questions or comments for Mina? No? All right. Thank you for being here, Mina. Moving on to agenda item 3, the consent agenda. Agenda item 3.1. Would a board member like to make a motion to approve the items listed in the consent agenda?
So moved.
Would a board member like to second that motion?
Second.
I'll take any questions or comments on the consent agenda items from the board now. None? We'll take a vote. Heather, roll call, please.
Mr. Adams?
Aye.
Mrs. Capo? Mrs. Case?
Aye.
Mr. Kushner?
Aye.
Mrs. Wolf?
Aye.
All right, the ayes have the vote, and the motion is passed. Moving on to agenda item 4, action items. We have no action items, so we'll move on to agenda item 5, upcoming meetings and designations. Our next meeting is Tuesday, November 10th, 2020, work session in person in the admin building at 8:30 a.m. Depending on quarantine, we may have to Zoom it, but as of now, it looks like we can meet in person. And then the next meeting is Monday, November 30th, the regular meeting in person at 6:15, again, depending on quarantine. Any questions or comments about our next two big meetings?
Do we have a location yet for the regular meeting? Is that in the at the conference room, or is the town hall available, or no word yet?
Still, we're still not able to use town hall.
Okay.
Okay, so probably the
conference room.
Yeah, the conference room, and then we can Zoom in any participants so we're not overcrowded.
Yep.
And a lot can change in a few weeks, so we'll see how we go. All right, moving on to agenda item, or any other questions or comments about our next meetings? Nope. Moving on to agenda item 6, other. Anybody have any others?
I wouldn't mind talking a little bit about, where we're headed this week and next, and get your feedback on it.
Please.
We, as administrative team, we really saw the power of in-person learning and the value of it, and of course, obviously, the power of it. And we also, although we had some quarantines at that time, like I mentioned earlier, quarantine large groups of people, which put havoc into our system. Other than that, it worked out very well. We felt the kids were safe, they were following the rules, the teachers were able to do what they needed to do. And now with the changing of how they quarantine people, we think that it's a very viable option to go in person. But the problem with that, of course, is the increased rates and the community spread that's happening and evacuation. So it is a balance that we're worried about. We're not necessarily worried at high levels because the percentages just aren't there that our kids and teachers won't be safe. But we are worried about the disruption that we're in, and then we have to quarantine. You're out, you're in. Some people are in, some are out. That kind of stuff. That does concern us. That's probably our largest concern right now. And with larger community spread, that could be a problem. We have about 3 weeks before Thanksgiving, and then 3 weeks after Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving is also a crucial time too. As you know, people traveling, probably not as much as for us as it is colleges. But I was on a meeting today with Cooter, and they said, well, we're not worried about CSU kids. We're worried about all the kids coming back from every college in the nation to their homes and staying there with their kids that's still in high school. So that is an issue. Because not everybody goes to CSU or CU. People are coming from all over and coming back to our towns from college as well. So something that we're going to have to monitor to a certain degree. But we do want to go forward and get our kids back, especially our younger kids. That is so crucial that they're in person, and they just don't do as well in cloud school. So that's our goal right now, and we're going to monitor it. We want to look at testing. We want to see results when people come back off quarantine. Some people want us to go back to school tomorrow. Probably can't do that. We expected to be on evacuation this week. On Friday, that was the general feeling, and today it changed for the right reasons and for good of everything. But will take us a little while to transfer back. And as Janet said, there's still kids that were in hotels today, so it's going to take some while to transmit back. So. But we are going to look towards that, and I just guess what you guys are feeling, or any concerns, or anything you want me to check into. This is becoming problematic throughout the state. Some people that have been in-person learning are going to remote learning right now, just because of the disruption, and that is a concern.
Well, I'm sure, Sheldon, it needs to have a point made for people that it's not like that. Cloud school one day and then in person the very next, when you're having to plan out in advance. So it does take some time for that transition to take place. I think it's just an important point to make for their parents.
I would agree with that. I think the transitions are hard for the kids, but the transitions are equally hard for the staff as well. And making sure they have the time to plan out a week, know what is going to be asked for them, and then the next week know what's going to be asked of them. I want to take a moment to point out that everyone on this board in some capacity is a current or former educator, and we all understand the value of in-person learning. None of us want to be full remote indefinitely, but we do also want to keep everybody safe. I think we all agree the fewer transitions, the better. We all want to keep everybody safe. Ideally, the kids are back, but it's a fine balance, and the numbers are concerning right now. So please do, continue to monitor, continue to adapt, which is definitely the other word of the year. Janet's is perseverance, and the other one is adapt and be flexible. It's tough, and thank you for being open and transparent about how things are looking as we make these decisions. But this week, I think it makes sense to stay remote as we let families come back and get settled back in, and let the teachers work with the plans that they made over the weekend, so that we're not asking them to shift gears again midweek, as some of them are coming back to their homes for the first time in a few weeks.
Exactly. Well said, Danielle.
Yeah, thank you. And Sheldon, also great job handling this super complex situation. I think you've done a great job. One thing I wonder about, and I'm not sure the capacity, but you sent out that email about free testing, I think at the fairgrounds for staff.
Right.
I wonder if we can or should send that out to our families, especially the ones who have been living, packed in hotel rooms or on people's couches, and especially in English and in Spanish, just so they know about that opportunity.
Right. Like I said, I just forwarded it barely before I got on this meeting, but we'll try to do that in the morning, which will be a little late. I was hoping to get this over the weekend, but it just came out just a little while ago. But yeah, I agree. This is actually, the town is pushing it out too. So it is actually there. I got it from the town. So yes, it is definitely for the whole community, not just our staff. And so yes, we want to get as many people tested as possible and isolate as much as possible. And we really need everybody to step up and do their job of social distancing and masking and testing and symptom checking if we're going to keep kids in school, because that's what's going to get us, is those kids coming, being sick at home and causing quarantines and so on, or families. So it's a real critical time as a nation, as a state, as a county, and as a school right now, that we limit our access and our bubbles and really bottle up a little bit here so we can continue on doing the things that we need to do in person safely.
Yeah, two natural disasters all at the same time, the quarantine and the fires, and the communication was tight and focused, and thank you. I just have so much gratitude for all of our firefighters and first responders and our admin team. And we were all on a plane that was going down, and we survived it. And there's going to be some emotions from all of us. But thank you. You all held it together so well, and I'm so appreciative.
Yeah, I mentioned it between our staff and our administration and everyone. I was asked by Representative Nuguth in his meeting, and we had 5 or 6 superintendents that were affected in different ways. I said, they said, how are you doing? And I said, relatively, we're doing really well. With what we're running into, we're doing really, really well. Everybody's stepping up. We have what we need. We're doing what we need to do. We're just dealing with some really awful things. And so, but we're doing it well. So I appreciate everybody's stepping up and doing the things that we needed to do.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments for others? No. And thank you for all the very thoughtful conversation and comments in this meeting. We don't get a chance to do that often. Moving on to agenda item 7, adjournment. Would a board member like to make a motion to adjourn this regular meeting?
So moved.
So moved.
All right, we're done. Thank you, everybody. And thank you, everybody that joined us.